Good evening, Winthrop Votes. Welcome to another edition of Winthrop Votes Live. Um, and as the trials and tribulations of lives continue,
live streaming.
Yeah, that too.
People would think we're talking about actual lives.
Yeah. Your lives are continuing. Live streaming. Yeah. We are unclear where our guest is this evening.
She's in. She's in.
Oh, she's in. Oh, good.
Yeah. I just wanted to. We'll do the intro first.
Okay, you do that then. Yeah, we're gonna.
And now she's running back to turn the light off.
Oh, good.
She's in the green room for the people that are watching. She's in the green room.
The green room.
I can see what she's. We'll bring you right on, Suzanne. So once again, we have another candidate for a school committee that wanted to come on the show. By the way, I'm Scott McLean, and my sidekick over there, or I'm his sidekick, however you want to view it, is Todd Sacco. The infamous Todd Sacco, I might add.
Yeah, infamous. That's
he's infamous.
That's a
around Winthrop, at least.
Yeah, I'm a big deal, and a big deal. I'm a big deal.
I used to be infamous.
Yeah.
Then
look at that got us.
Yeah. So Suzanne Leonard wanted to come on. Like the other candidates, which is I think it's a smart move on all their parts. Although we're just a small cog in the big machine, we do have we're starting to gather a good following, and we're just hoping that it keeps catching on around Winthrop, because we're here for you. We're here to give you people.
If I could jump on that too, just so people, early on we had some folks poking fun at our 2 viewers, 5 viewers, whatever it was. And you had to re-educate with the fact that it's not about the lives, it's about the reviews. Well, we have
the live streaming.
The live streaming.
I keep thinking of people dying.
All right, I'm sorry. It's not about the live streams, the live streaming, the live podcast. It's about the reviews, the replays, the clicks, the shares.
The after views, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of the candidates that have 500 plus views of their videos. So, I don't know.
Those are all potential votes.
That's right.
Everything has to start small. We're just going to build this up. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. So, without further ado, let's bring on our guest. She's running for Winthrop School Committee, Suzanne Leonard. And action.
Hello.
Hi, Suzanne.
How you doing, Suzanne?
Hi, good. I was in black and white before, and now I'm in color, so I feel like I've moved up already.
Wow.
All right.
Look at that.
Live in Technicolor.
Yeah. She's so would you consider yourself technically savvy, or was it luck that you got back to color versus black and white?
I don't know. I think it might be your program. I don't know. When I was in the little box, I don't think I had any.
Oh,
yeah. When that's considered the green room, that's when I can see you because I'm the producer and I get to bring you on and take you off at will. Which I don't ever kick. I don't kick anybody off. So. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to be controversial. We're not here to stir the pot. We're just here to try to get facts, and only the facts. And we're here for the voters, actually. So
yeah. And so with that being said, Suzanne, thank you for coming on. We giving the voters an opportunity to hear from you again, because we think it's important, right? Sorry about for you guys, the time you spent at the PSA, the Winthrop Town Republican event here. I know that it's a shame that it didn't get to go on WCAT. I don't want to bring up that wound again, but I thank you for participating, and I'm sorry that went that way. In terms of this evening, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a few of these. You'll get your few minutes that you need to introduce yourself. We've got some questions for you. We want to keep it, we're going to drill down where we see it necessary, and, just want to have a good show with you here.
And let me interrupt. Before we continue, I actually did take the clip of Suzanne. She was asked a question at the Meet the Candidates night. So she's going to get her airtime.
Yes, she is.
So this is, I'm going to put it up now. And I'm going to fill the screen. So here we go.
To remind you, the basis of critical race theory portrays America as systemically racist, and that many of the founding American figures weren't heroes. Do you think CRT has any place in the school programs?
I think that critical race theory.
That's not the right one.
Oh, all right. I got the wrong one.
Guys,
Okay.
That isn't me.
That's, oh, wow. Okay. So there I go. I made my first mistake. I don't know why I thought, I thought it was you.
I could see the hair and stuff, but
Yeah.
that wasn't me.
I'm looking, I go, wait a minute. That's not much. All right. So you don't get your time like everybody else. Sorry about that.
I haven't seen it. I was looking forward to seeing it.
Whoever that was got about 10 seconds of airtime.
Yeah, that was Jen Powell.
Okay, Jen Powell gets some airtime.
You said it, not us, Suzanne. So I guess then, without any further ado, you get as much time as you need right now to kind of kick us off here.
Oh, great. Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here tonight. My name is Suzanne Leonard. I am a professor of English at Simmons University in Boston. So I've been in the education field for about 20 years. I have taught probably thousands of students. I've also been involved in administrative capacities in my university. So I understand budgeting, benchmarking, goal setting, strategic planning. So basically setting priorities and then figuring out how we're going to meet them. So I would say I'm an expert in the field of education. And I think you need experts in some of these town fields. So I'm also a parent. I have a daughter. She just turned 7 like last week. So I'm still thinking she's 6, but she's a first grader at the Gorman Fort Banks Elementary School. So I'm also a parent. I have a vested interest, obviously, in what happens to our school systems. But first and foremost, honestly, I'm an expert in this field. So that's why I'm running for school committee.
In the field of?
In the field of education. I'm a professional
education.
educator.
Okay.
Yep. I've studied education pretty much my entire life.
So do you think the school committee is for the teachers or for the children? Because it's...
Sorry, I'm sorry. The chat is like interrupting my abilities. I actually think the school committee is for the schools. I think the school committee is charged with oversight of the schools. Its job is to make sure that our schools are the best they can be, that they serve the needs of our students, right? So the school committee, as I understand it, has oversight over the superintendent, who then in turn has oversight over the principals and the academic leadership. So I think you need people in positions of power in this town that have the requisite, sorry, there's a siren.
The mean streets of Winthrop.
Yes, I'm right on Revere Street. So yeah, I mean, I think the school committee is for the schools, right? And it's for the best functioning, execution, planning, and frankly, education of our students. So that, in my opinion, that's what the school system is for, or the school committee is for.
Are you for the teachers, a teachers union?
I think even that question for or against, the school committee oversees the schools. The teachers belong to a teachers union. And so I think the question of for and against is really kind of a misnomer. What I'm for is the education of our students, the best education of our students, and doing what is right for them to make Winthrop a competitive school system in a state that has wonderful schools. But I think Winthrop's probably could be better. And I think that's what I'm after. That's what I'm after. Not some sort of for or against position, but really smart thinking about how to use the limited resources that we have to best educate our students.
If we could back up a little bit, to talk about the school committee's role. I don't know if you know this or not, Suzanne, but I served for 4 years.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Lost my second bid by 11 votes. No, I lied. 26
Oh,
votes.
wow.
26
My goodness.
votes.
You're like Gore there.
Yeah, well, whoa. I invented the internet. I invented the internet. And I'm a geek. But honestly, having served, I think we have to state that there is the role of the school committee is very clear. A school committee's responsibilities lie in these three main areas. First, to write and maintain policies that guide the district. Second, to approve and monitor the budget for the school system, which I would argue is their most important role. And third, to hire and evaluate the superintendent of the district.
Mhm, mhm.
There have been there is a for or against mentality, unfortunately, in schools, because let's be honest, when it comes down to it, when it's time to negotiate, all the nice, lovely, warm and fuzzies that happen up until negotiation time instantly evaporate if the school committee dares to say no to a raise. You are going to be on that committee and forced to make that decision. Either you give a raise and say goodbye to every single program you want, or you don't give a raise and because you want to implement a program that you have.
Todd, I want to just say that I don't think it's as simple as that. With my experience in school systems, I know that what you do is you set strategic priorities. And so, for example, in my current job, I haven't gotten a raise in about 4 or 5 years, I think, as a professor, because my school was undergoing quite a bit of financial hardship. I don't think this is like going to send Simmons stocks plummeting. We're never a nonprofit. But I'll just be honest. The higher education is really suffering right now. And I haven't gotten a raise. And this year, my school decided they wanted to prioritize, among other things, they wanted to give us a raise. So we got like a 1% raise. It was nominal, right? It was nominal. But the school decided that was a strategic priority for this year. So I think that it's not just a question of giving teachers raises or not giving teachers raises. It's what's the strategic priorities of the school district for that budget cycle. Right. And sometimes that budget cycle or that bargaining cycle. Right. So I think, that's exactly precisely why you need strong leadership on the school committee, which is to say, what are the strategic priorities?
But Suzanne, it actually is that simple. You're right about the strategic priorities. Unfortunately, strategic priorities require funding. And so let's keep it simple for the audience, because, look, your background is very impressive. And I think sometimes it's hard for you not to communicate in edu-speak and words, candidly, that even, that go over my head. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit.
Can you tell me what I said you didn't quite get?
I don't want to. No, I don't. I got it all, but I said sometimes educators speak in edu-speak. I'm a little more trained in it because, I served for 4 years. But to be clear, it is as simple as that, because your priorities require funding, period, the end. And there is not enough money to do both. I'm not asking you to make that decision right now. But I can tell you there is not enough money to give a teacher a 1% raise in 1 year and have programs put in place that are funded and contiguous, meaning they go on year in and up through K through 12 as an example. Or, let's talk about foreign language as an example. Yeah. Foreign languages should be running from where if it's possible to make them run from K through 12, I would want that as a parent.
I would too. I do too.
But there has to be multiple, and we don't have the funds to do that and to give a 1%. We don't. The math doesn't work.
So I think that partly what we're talking about here is needing new budget revenues and streams and innovative things. No, I know you're laughing at me, but really,
it's easier said than done. Yeah. It's easy to just say that.
And you're on the school committee.
But I also think,
but you're on the school
into an us versus them about the teachers is pretty easy too, right? Like teacher bashing, I think, is pretty easy. Like sitting down with budgets is not easy.
Nobody's bashing
teachers.
Where did we bash a teacher?
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean you. I didn't mean you were bashing teachers. Yeah. I just meant, getting into an us versus them with the teachers. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to misspeak there.
Well, the teachers union has gotten a lot of airtime over the last year. The teachers union is a hot ticket item. So the average person doesn't really understand what's going on. They just hear teachers union bad, teachers union bad. They want masks. They want to stay out of school. They want to stay with at-home teaching. They're at risk. They're they're above nurses and policemen and firemen and first responders who have to be out there in the streets doing this stuff. Teachers should be in the classrooms teaching. So this is why you hear the teacher bashing. They're a product of their own, how can I put it? Their own
obedience.
Yeah. A reputation. So
I don't want to get lost in that. either, but Suzanne, it's not necessarily the teachers themselves, because I know several who were very appalled, as an example, at the behavior this past year, but kept quiet because they didn't want to be bullied. They didn't want to lose their friends. These things happen. But I don't. Again, this is your time, so let's
Yeah,
go
we're
back.
not-
Let's go back to the questions.
Okay.
I want us to take a bigger step back. Generally speaking, Suzanne,
Mhm.
when reading your response to the survey, the hotly contested survey, I heard a lot of, you want to seek to add programs to address accessibility, supporting mental health, basic needs, have the child's basic needs accounted for, which I think are all laudable and noble goals, but again, financially impossible. But do you have a priority for these any priority for these programs, and where you think you could find money?
I think right now what I'm seeing is a few things bubbling to the surface in Winthrop, right? That parents are getting really concerned about. I'll just give you two that seem. One is the band, right? The fact that we don't have a band in the younger grades, and there's real energy and there's enthusiasm, and I think there's a will to fundraise, right, for these kind of programs. Also, foreign languages. We only teach Spanish, right, in the high schools. So what I want to say is, I think we do need to listen to the community. What are the programs that the community feels they need and are not getting? And then, how do we allocate our budget priorities accordingly? So I think I don't think we disagree on this. You and I,
Well,
maybe we do. I don't know.
Well, I don't think we disagree. I just don't, with all due respect, I don't feel like that was an answer. I feel like that was an equivocation.
Banned in foreign language is an equivocation.
No, and you mentioned the teacher raise. It's an equivocation, meaning you're saying, yeah, there's ability to fundraise, and we can maybe look in our budget, but how? And fundraising doesn't go beyond the year you fundraise it. In other words, these programs. I'll give you an example. When I served, a couple of young ladies I think they were in middle school, started the band up again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the band is still going as a product of their work,
yeah,
but it was started with fundraising. And then taken on I believe now it's paid for with activities fees.
Okay.
I'm not sure. You could look into that.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, what I'm saying, Suzanne, is things need to come out of the budget. Our tax dollars pay this budget. We can't keep going out and fundraising every time we need something, because you're just taxing people again. So I'll repeat the question. Your programs, do you have a priority, and where are you going to find money?
I think we need somebody who's going to do more grant raising, to be perfectly honest with you. I think this town needs somebody who's going to apply for grants. There's a lot of money that we're not getting because we don't have somebody dedicated to getting this money, right? So, I think that I hear what you're saying about the scarcity of resources, but I also think we need to be really strategic about thinking, okay, well, then where can we find more resources? And we live in one of the richest states, right, in this country, right? There is grant money available, but you have to have somebody to ask for grants and administer grants. And that's something I know from my professional life, right? Even if you get $100,000, you have to have somebody managing this money and telling you, and sort of accounting for the money and making sure the money goes to the things that the grant is allotted for. So, I just feel like saying, no, I don't want to give teachers raises, or yes, I want to give teachers raises, doesn't account for the complexities of what it means to run a school system. That's what I'm saying.
I would agree to a certain extent, but again, grants are just like fundraising. They're not sustainable. You have to keep applying. They don't just keep coming automatically every year, which is, again, and this is no offense, but this is always how the educators want to get the money. We need a grant writer. No. It's not a smart business move to add a Latin program, let's call it 6th grade through high school, and all the teachers to support it with grants. That's just not smart. And
why not? Why not? I mean, I had someone tell me yesterday they thought we should be teaching Latin. A town resident. I'm just asking why are you saying that?
You just said you had a town resident tell you we should be teaching Latin. That's completely different than how we're funding it. I'm saying we should have Latin, but we can't afford it because we won't. Grants don't work like that. It's not that simple. And then when you get into the accounting,
so just not giving teachers raises is the answer. I mean, I hear you. There's a problem. But
Well, I didn't. First of all, I
But
didn't
so
say.
what's your answer, Todd?
First of all, I didn't say that. I think first we should take a step back and realize that unfortunately, one of the only groups on the planet that thinks they should have a raise every single year is a teacher. Okay, I don't know where that comes from.
Not this one. Not this one you're talking to.
That's fine, but I served in the Winthrop School Committee. When I dared to say no, I was harassed, bullied, made to walk through the gauntlet. Okay, because I dared to say, why can't it be 012 or 0013 or something, just to give the schools time. So yeah, I do believe that is the only real answer, or there is another answer: override. I don't want an override.
I think that's an answer, though. Right?
Well, it is an answer, but you'll never get one in Winthrop.
I think that actually that question is kind of unanswerable. I think it's a debatable question, as we're seeing right here.
Yeah,
and then I think with your experience, you have your point of view. Suzanne hasn't been on the committee yet, so she has ideas, but how much she'll get done when she gets on there might be, we have yet to find out, right?
Are you suggesting I won't get anything done, Scott?
No, I said that you don't understand. You're not on the committee, so you don't know right now what the needs are, how the budget runs. You don't know the inner workings of that Winthrop School Committee, do you?
I can't say I do.
So that was my point. I'm saying this is an unanswerable question. I was actually coming to your defense because you guys are going to debate this all night. You're going to say this and Todd will say that. And I'm just being the producer, the devil's advocate, the middleman.
All right. I'll be quiet.
No. Listen.
No, we want you to talk.
Don't be quiet. I
listen.
just wanted to move on from that because it was just carrying on. So one of the Facebook viewers commented, when it comes down to it, you're going into a contract negotiation here. Can you or will you say no to raises your fund these to raise your fund these ideas and programs?
Probably to fund these.
Say no to raises.
Raises.
To fund.
Okay, to fund
the
programs. I guess the question is, and maybe this is where your point, Scott, to try to help me was really well taken. I just don't know. I haven't looked at the budgets. I don't have access to. So it would be disingenuous of me to say yes or no to that, right? I'm not like a raise above everything. As I said, I'm somebody who hasn't gotten a raise in years and years and years. It is not my first priority. And I have a lot of colleagues of mine that are super angry about this. And that's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the needs of our students and what do our students need and what does my institution need to succeed. But I can't give a blanket yes or no to that question of raises because I haven't seen the numbers.
Couple things. You actually do have access to the data if you want it. You can request the budgets, the town budget and the school budget. Mm-hmm. And I would advise you to do it as soon as possible because you'll see very quickly the reality of the budgets. Like, I don't know. Are you familiar, Suzanne, with unfunded mandates?
I guess I'm not.
Okay. So I wasn't until I served on the school committee. So you're not the only one. An unfunded mandate, the Obama money. When my first meeting, I had to vote on whether or not to accept the Obama money. And the Obama money came with strings. And the Obama money also ran out and we had to carry the ball forward on our budget. So unfunded mandates sometimes get gobbled up by grant monies because when the money from the feds fall off, that's just one example of how inputs and outputs move. The budget is fluid, fungible, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, I hope that's helpful.
It is. Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is about your qualifications. You answered the question two on the newspaper question. And I want to say you were talking about, let me just read. As a school committee member, I'll be a voice to effectively advocate for the families in this community and to make sure we can secure the funds necessary and implement policies and programs that make our children's overall educational experience better. So let's just stop. Secure the funds necessary. So you talked about grants.
Mhm.
Do you
Are you
think?
sure that's my answer? I'm sorry. No,
Well,
I'm
let me double check. Let me double check.
Well, only 2 people filled it out, so
No, different one. Sorry.
No,
she's,
I'm sorry. He's looking at the one from the
yeah,
Winthrop
no, she's
Times.
right. Let me scroll down a bit. Sorry, I lied. I believe in the candidate with
I
the
was
greatest.
like, I don't
Yep.
remember writing it. Now I'm sorry, I've lost you. Hold on one second.
No.
Remember you asked if I was technologically savvy? Somehow
It's the second. Yeah, I see you. I
Oh, here we
believe I'm
go,
the
guys. Sorry
candidate with
about
the
that.
greatest bird's eye view of what the school system needs to meet the
That's me.
increasing
That's
pressures.
me.
That's you, right?
That's me. Yeah.
I want to, as a teacher, my goal is to create a space where learning is accessible for every student.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Learning is accessible.
Yeah, so that means that every student, no matter what their skill range, no matter what their background, is given an opportunity for learning that that meets whatever needs they have, right?
Okay. Does that mean, so let me dig in on that a little bit, because again, public school, like most public services, struggles the more finite, or the more, that's probably finite's wrong, the more specialized the schools try to be. Where we now have, which we didn't have when you and I were in school, Scott. There were no adjustment counselors. We didn't have, we didn't have all these mental health challenges. The requirements for education were different. There's a lot more, in fairness, put on the schools, but at the same time, I feel like sometimes, like to your answer to that question, Suzanne, I feel like you guys bring it on yourselves. I don't think it's a public school. Public services cannot be experts in everything. So they should just be experts in what they do. I feel like your approach here, I guess, is spreading us thinner than we already are. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of my students have a lot of mental health challenges. I'll just be honest about this, and that is not solely restricted to the higher education realm. And if a student, frankly, is not safe, secure, and has their basic needs met, and I mean like housing, food, but also like a stable environment, right? They're not going to be able to learn anything, right? And so no matter how good a teacher is, no matter how well the teacher is paid, they're not going to be able to reach a student who doesn't come from a baseline of security, right? So I think, as much as I want to say, oh, well, that's the problem of the mental health profession, or that's the problem of pediatricians, the fact is students can't learn unless they're mentally stable. So it's something I've thought a lot about as in my own profession, right? Like, I'm not a mental health professional, but I have had to understand that I have to help my students to get to a place of mental health and stability in order to have them be productive, functioning members of my classroom, right? So my answer to that question was really informed by sort of a kind of a basic need hierarchy in some ways.
So are you comparing your students?
Somebody just wrote that.
Yeah.
I see that in the chat.
So are you comparing your students to what the students in Winthrop go through?
Yeah, I am. I mean, frankly, my school takes a lot of students from Massachusetts, from small towns, in the Massachusetts and New England region.
You said a lot of them have mental issues.
Yeah, there's a mental health crisis in higher education, and I'm sorry, not just higher education, but in all of education.
Yeah, I'll say.
But it's true. I mean, I think, and you may agree with this, but when I was listening to school committee meetings during COVID, a lot of what students were talking about in terms of being kept out of school was the mental health challenges that was presenting for them.
That presented mental health issues for adults.
Of course.
So you can't just single it out to children. That messed a lot of people up.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
But
that's an anomaly.
Well, is it really?
Yeah. Has it ever happened before?
Mental health challenges have been on the rise long.
Well, you just referred to people, the kids that were staying home.
Right.
I'm referring
that was
to
the point
that
you
issue
used.
Bubbled to the surface in 2020 and early 2021. But those challenges pre-existed COVID. And somebody I saw, food insecurity is real here. Winthrop's free and reduced lunch numbers are at 52%. So I think the notion that there are basic needs not being met in Winthrop is real.
Yeah, there are basic needs not being met everywhere. I mean, I'd argue that there are that not to get off the rails here, but the schools, I don't believe the schools should be dealing with that issue. I think welfare is welfare. And by the way, I'm a product of, at times, welfare, peanut butter, cheese, living at my grandmother's in the projects. Okay, I get some of this, but when the feds were giving the money to the states in block grants and the states were running welfare, we did it way better. We did it way better. But I don't want to go down that rat hole. That's not because as a school committee member, you're never, ever, ever going to even get to this. You're not. It's just, you are going to have way too many things on your plate to try to get like the goal. Our free and reduced lunch numbers are probably much higher than that. A lot of people don't identify because they're embarrassed, or maybe they only qualify temporarily. Who knows? But we are way underreported, and so that's just, and you're never going to get the accurate numbers. I want to go back to, or I want to talk about, this is a good segue into mental health and masks, okay? Because I think the point Scott was making is that the anomaly here was the pandemic and kids being educated at home and their mental health worsening, despite the fact, by the way, and not in my opinion, we now know the science is clear. Kids didn't have to stay home. They just didn't. But I want to ask you, do you believe the masks are necessary right now?
I'm following the state guidance. I do have some statistics. I have some statistics for you. So it's school systems like ours that started the year with a mask mandate had an 8% chance of having a COVID outbreak among their school systems. School systems that implemented a mask mandate after opening, like a few weeks into school, had a 39% chance of having a COVID outbreak. Schools that didn't have any sort of mask mandate had, I want to say 59%. It's either 59 or 56% chance of having a COVID outbreak. So the fact that you don't see, let me finish. The fact that you do not see a COVID outbreak in our Winthrop school system, I would argue, has a lot to do with the fact that you started the school year with a mask mandate. So sure, it looks like now, why would we need a mask mandate? Everybody's fine. We're not having a COVID outbreak. But the data, the data shows that early mask mandate is probably the reason that we are in such a good position now.
Okay. All right. Slow down.
Okay.
You said a lot of maybes and probablys. That's not science. That's not a fact. Okay. So let me, now it's my turn.
An unknown...
Suzanne, I didn't cut you off. Don't cut me off. Okay. I want to ask you something about your statistics, because you said a something percent chance. Do you know of any school districts in the country? Do you know of any school districts in the country that have had, at any point during COVID, a COVID outbreak?
Yeah, of course.
Name one.
Oh my God, they're all over the place.
Again, that's not an answer. Name one, because there is not one. I looked. There were weak news, tangential news reports saying in this district in Georgia, all of these students had COVID, or these teachers had COVID. Mm-hmm. When you look, they weren't even back in school. It was an August report. Okay, they weren't even back in school. It was an August report. And the Facebook user just put Ocala, Florida. Same thing. These were not schools where it was outbreaks in the schools. The in-school spread numbers, the WHO, the the CDC, the state government, the statistics are clear. There has been no in-school spreads. There hasn't.
There has been in-school spreads.
And listen, I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to jump in here. Excuse me, both of you. This has nothing to do with her running for school committee. Once again, we're off the subject.
Thank you.
We're off subject. And that goes for you too. You fell into it.
I did.
For both of you. I mean, again, let's just stick to.
But Scott, I disagree. This is important because it's not. We're not dealing in facts. I'll move along, but we're not.
No. She answered the question by saying she wants to follow,
and she
wants to follow the state mandate.
Yes, but that's not really an answer. But go ahead. Let's move on.
Okay. So let's get into the the big, the hot issue for school committees.
Oh dear.
Oh, you know what's coming.
I know it's coming.
All right. Do you think CRT? All right. And now I watched the candidates.
I was going to say, did you watch the video?
I did.
Why
Some of
didn't
them
you?
think it's an actual class, right? Some of them think it's some actually like it's a part of the curriculum. I'm just saying, and it's not. It's a theory that gets woven or injected into specific. It seems specific subjects, civics, and U.S. history mostly. Do you think there's a place for CRT in the Winthrop schools?
Well, I was asked exactly the same question at the Republican sponsored debate, and I cited the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents, who emphatically state that CRT is not taught in the in the Massachusetts school system.
It's not taught. Now, there's a little play on words there. It's not taught because it's not an actual class. It's a theory, as it says, critical race theory. So theories aren't really taught. Those are philosophies. Those are talked about, but it's not taught.
It's not taught.
You don't teach a theory. You discuss a theory. You discuss a theory, right? So do you think, regardless of what the Massachusetts superintendents think, we're talking about the Winthrop School Committee, Winthrop Schools. Mm-hmm. You're running for school committee. Mm-hmm. Do you think that CRT is appropriate to be brought into any of the classrooms, in any way, shape, or form in the Winthrop schools?
I've been preparing for this question. So it's hard to say something should be taught when I'm saying it's not being taught. The school teachers, the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents has said that this is not a curriculum, and you're right. But they say something else that I do agree with, which I think an accurate rendering of American history, the facts, to use your words, Todd, should be taught.
The facts.
The facts.
I learned about slavery when I was in middle school and high school, right? Well, I learned about the civil rights movement in the 60s, right? What did I miss that these kids today are missing?
Yeah, what's not being taught?
Yeah. I mean, what else do you want to add to that that's part of U.S. history?
Something like the racial wealth gap is created by the fact that post-World War II, when white Americans got all kinds of loans to buy homes, Black Americans were denied those loans.
So that's a segment in time in U.S. history. So you want to focus on that? How about if we focus?
No. It's not just a segment in time. So let's just hold on 1 second, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not just a segment in time because time is contiguous, right?
All right.
So in other words, and I'll just use myself as an example, right? My parents own a home. I now own a home, right? Likely my daughter will own a home. I'm probably going to inherit a home from my parents, right? So when people in 1955 were denied the ability to purchase a home, people of color were denied the ability to purchase a home. When those folks died, they had nothing to pass on to their children. And a lot of white people did.
Isn't that what the civil rights movement was? It basically brought to the forefront black voting, black suppression.
Those are actually different things, right? Black voting and black.
Yeah, but that was part of the whole civil rights movement, wasn't it?
The civil rights movement was
they only talked about what?
The civil rights movement was not about like inherited wealth.
Inherited wealth? What the hell did I inherit? And I'm white. There's a lot of people that don't inherit. Don't have inherited wealth
and
that are white
milk
in this country. I think it's across the board.
Every single person did. What I'm saying is there are parts of history that affect where we are today that I would like to see taught more accurately.
How about the Irish? How about the plight of the Irish when they came to America? Did you study that? Do you know anything about that?
The Irish were treated terribly. And there's a whole history about the way marginalized people are pitted against one another to keep them all down, right? Irish.
No, I think the Irish did pretty well for themselves in the end.
In the end, they did. But at
Yeah.
the very beginning, the Irish came and tried to work in Boston, and there were signs, right? No Irish need apply.
So why don't we teach
Irish
that?
were aligned with African Americans as a way to sort of marginalize them.
So why aren't we taught that? Why should we just be
I
taught
think we
about
should
Black
be taught
history
that.
and
I
how
totally think we
Black
should be
people were
taught
treated?
I think we should totally be taught
But
about
that's
the way
not
the
part of
Irish were
CRT.
treated, the way the Italians were treated.
That's not part of
That's
CRT.
It's not. Nope.
It's not even mentioned in CRT.
But
Not even in any of the theories does it say
no, but
anything
look,
about
you guys.
Irish. What?
But remember my point. The theories are not being taught in schools, and I don't think they should be. What I think is that history should be taught. I see somebody else who just said in the Facebook chat, Italians, right? Jewish people who became Jewish Americans. Right? I'm not just saying that there's only one group that was marginalized and oppressed in history. I think we need to learn about all the ways in which people were pitted against one another.
Well, you did say the blacks were marginalized and they didn't have an inherited wealth because they couldn't get loans.
I did.
Post
And
World War
I
II.
would say that Irish people, when they first came to Boston, were totally marginalized and were, there was, there's a book and you're not going to want to read it because it's something from my discipline, but it's literally called When the Irish Became White. And it is about the notion that when Irish people first came to the United States, they were basically equated with Black people because they were.
I'm very versed on Irish history and Irish in America.
Okay.
I've been learning that from my father would drill it into us as kids.
Right. So you would know that part of what I'm arguing here is that just accurate history should be taught, not theory, but accurate history. That's all I'm saying.
Do you agree with critical race theory? Do you agree with the overall concept of it? Critical race theory. Remember, race is a key word in the name.
You know what? I hear you, but you're asking me, like, as a person running for school committee, I do not see critical race theory being taught in the public school system in Massachusetts.
All right.
And that's, I think, what matters. If you want to ask me about my professional life, what I publish about, I'd be happy to tell you that.
Well,
too.
that's a whole different. I was
going to say,
your
like,
thing,
I don't
God
think
bless you for that.
necessarily relevant to my run for school committee. Right.
All right.
But
Very good.
I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
No. Listen. Whatever you do is good. I'm sure. I'm sure.
And just for the record, the thing about critical race theory, it really is it says that our systems are essentially racist. That's really its underpinning across the board. I mean, I can Google it, and every time I Google it, that's the first thing that comes up.
The
Yet
definition
nobody
of
can
critical
really
race
agree.
theory is a body of legal scholarship and an academic movement of U.S. civil rights scholars, civil rights, and activists who seek to critically examine the intersection of race and U.S. law and to challenge mainstream America, the mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. It's actually an affront, and I said this to Lane. It's an affront to liberalism. Liberals are all for it, but it's an affront to everything that they want to happen. But they don't seem to think that. They just see it in colors. My opinion. So, but you answered the question.
Yes.
There's no room for it in Winthrop schools, or it shouldn't be a part of any curriculums because it might come up. You see it all over America.
Let me dovetail off that a little bit, though, Suzanne, because I think, I think there's a valid point in there that there are things that get missed, but our history continues to grow, and cuts have to be made to what you teach. So, I don't know. You talked about redlining. I mean, candidly, redlining, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, was part of the FDR's New Deal and the housing, public housing as we know it today. I'm not sure.
No,
I
I'm
would
actually talking about more like supports post World War II, when we were trying to kind of revive the economy, and there were a lot of social services given, in 1945 up through, what we think of now as kind of the sort of the Cold War era.
Well, I mean, okay, but it did go back to the New Deal. I mean, that's kind of how it all. And I said this. I forget who I was talking. Oh, I had a nice conversation with Lydia Edwards at the football field on Friday night until I didn't, but that wasn't my fault. Somebody got involved anyway. But we were talking about housing, and I guess what I'm getting back at is there. Look, I know companies, I know people now who, quote unquote, redline. They're not going to their maps. These mortgage brokers and these folks who give away, who loan out money. They're not going to their maps and picking zip codes just because there's a lot of brown people in them. They're picking zip codes because they don't want to spend dollars and resources trying to market to people who won't qualify for loans. But going back to the point about the New Deal, talk to me about that a little bit, because we have some. I think we might have some common area here, and this is school committee focused. You talk about other parts of history that aren't being taught. What would you do to as we bring this all back together? How would you go through all of our years of history that keep growing and pick? How do you pick which pieces you kind of teach and drill down on? How would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. But I think you're absolutely right? Because somebody wrote in the chat, I think really smartly, every generation has had a CRT type of fight, and it's true, right? Like, any sort of background in some ways has had its own sort of CRT type fight. And I'm not of the mindset that, you have to play kind of the oppression Olympics, right? Which is like, well, this group was more oppressed than this group, and that's problematic. I don't agree with that either, right? So really what we're talking about is sort of like civics, I think you said that word, Scott.
I did, yeah. Civics.
Yeah, and I like that word so much, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the question is sort of, what do we teach our kids to make them good citizens? And that's what's really at the base of what I care about.
That's a good answer. I give you an applaud for that. I like
Thanks.
that.
I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean,
civics.
Well, and that should be, something that should be easy, because our kids are good citizens for the most part. Kids aren't born seeing color and divisiveness, which is my biggest beef about bringing all this stuff in and segregating it or separating it. No, I don't. I think it teaches racism. I think it fosters it. I think it makes people dig in. But I don't want to go down that rat hole. That's a smart answer, and I agree with you on that.
Civics. I do.
Teaching kids to be good people. Good
people
citizens.
And good citizens, right?
Yeah,
and I think, I'll say another thing, which is that part of the reason I wanted to raise my child here, and not in some bougie school system. Not that I could afford to live in a bougie school system.
I was going to say
fair about that too, right? But I think that the people in this town have values. They're good people, and they're trying to raise good students.
Winthrop's a great town. It's a great little
town.
It's
a great town. It's a great town. And at base, part of the reason I'm running for school system is to make sure that our schools are doing everything they can to make sure that they produce the most educated citizens, right? To make a better world, because we face a lot of challenges in it.
I grew up in Winthrop. I went in the Air Force in 1987, got out in 1997. I served, I was a federal officer, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, K-9 officer on a anti-terrorism, anti-smuggling unit in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. But I always went back to Winthrop. That's why I do this show with Todd. I'm very protective of Winthrop. Winthrop is a good town. It's a great town. Like I said, I am Winthrop. I took Winthrop all around the world with me. And the best friends, none of the people I was stationed with had friends like I had in Winthrop. Winthrop's a very unique town. And that's why I'm protective of it. It worked for me, and it can work for these kids without drastic changes. Now I understand the mental health issue. That wasn't addressed when we were growing up. Maybe I had mental health issues and I didn't know about it. I don't know.
I think we all did.
Maybe I did.
Maybe it's not maybe, Scott. I'm sorry. It's not maybe.
Well, I acted out a bit. I did act out a lot when I was in elementary school. I acted out quite a bit, to the point where my desk was put outside the room. But I grew up in a small house, 2 older brothers and a single mother on welfare. There's a lot going on. So it probably did have. That's why I acted out. And I'm glad that kids today have a chance to address that. So somebody just brought up this point. And this was asked of all the candidates, and Todd is a big proponent of this. What are your thoughts on a system-wide bus?
I am a huge proponent of this. I think we have found our like marriage here. I cannot understand why we don't have a bus. I mean, yeah,
I can help. I can explain it. I can explain it.
Yeah.
And I'll be very fair. It is work. It's work. The schools, and it goes back to my point earlier. We are not transportation business. We're not supposed to be breakfast business. We find socks and clothes for kids, for God's sakes, through our school system. For kids that come into school sometimes who don't have socks on their feet, some of the teachers are so good they have extra stuff in their room to give these kids clothes. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to be that. So, but in fairness, it was a lot of work. They ended up hiring someone full-time and gave them benefits, which started eating away at the savings. The idea was to try to have part-time drivers, and it really, candidly, it requires someone with an ability to think like a private sector person who can think strategically about how to creatively hire and who is willing to put that effort forward. And we aren't paying enough. We weren't paying enough for that. Other than that, and that's why, and if Gus sees the show, he might yell at me, but Gus was against it. Gus Martucci's on the school committee now, and he when he got on the school committee, he shut it down because he thought it was too much work and he didn't believe it saved money. But that was another debate. But the point is, they're not wrong. It's a lot of work, and it's and we had free buses. They were fine. They were running great. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, and I'm not of the mindset, and I'm sure you've gotten this from me. I'm not of the mindset that nothing should change, but I gotta tell you, like, this needs to change. I mean, you got to get the kids to school. I mean, like, and this notion of like, deputizing all of the parents to like drop off their kids and pick up their kids. It's just a nightmare. I mean, that being said, one of the things I wrote about this in the Viking Times interview is I do love watching the high school kids walk to school, right? That kind of high school and middle school kids.
Yeah.
We are a small town, and I feel like that is something like out of a different era, right? So I think if I had to put my resources, I would do buses for Gorman Fort Banks and the Cumming School, right? Like that's where we need those buses.
That's like Boca. Nobody walks in Boca.
Oh, it's
like
too
the
hot,
song "Nobody Walks in L.A."
No,
nobody walks in
right?
Boca Raton.
Right. I mean,
These kids,
maybe we could
they don't
raise
get
some
it.
money. Like we walk in Winthrop.
They don't get it. They don't even want to ride bikes. That's another.
Oh, we got plenty of that in Winthrop, though. We got nifty new bike sharrows. So I look, you've come on here and faced the fire and given some of the fire candidly, which is fine. I think this has been healthy for all of us and for the voters. And in fact, I want to give you another chance here because you probably know there's a lot of members that have joined this group that are of I would say you're more of a progressive if we had to put you in a bucket. Yeah. But there are a fair amount of conservatives, and the conservatives that are watching and will be watching the replay, especially some of the moms, and some of the moms that got involved because the school committee was supposed to be protecting their children, and they weren't. So I'm looking for candidates, and the people that kind of think like me are looking for candidates who are going to come to not allow the teachers union to come between them and their kids ever again. What say you?
Can I ask you a question about your question?
Sure, of course.
What specifically do you feel, in what specific way, and is the question really COVID related? Like in what way is the teachers union coming between people and their kids?
In this case, yeah, it's specific. I mean, there's a million ways I can name, but let's just talk about COVID, and let me frame it up for you to help you understand where we are coming from. Probably, so March of 20 is when everyone started getting locked down, right? Yeah. Shelter in place. Mm-hmm. But by May or June of 20, we started to see over in the UK, we started to see things opening up more. They were about 6 weeks ahead of us throughout this whole pandemic. And by the time school time came around, we had states like Florida and almost all of the interior states open, no masks in sports. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, some of these locations were very thinly populated, but across the country, and I don't want to get into this with you again because we disagree here, but across the country, believe me, if there were any reported major outbreaks at a school, we would have been shown the data in detail around here. But the point we're getting at here is a lot of us thought that we should not have been locked out of school. That and the teachers union here, I sat with Kristen Reynolds, and she gave me a list of the not until it's safe list. It was the most juvenile thing I ever saw. It was a checklist of air quality, this, that. It was 4 or 5 pages, front and back, of 8,000 little things that they needed to be done before they'd go back to the building. And then by the way, it didn't say how many of these things had to be accomplished. It didn't describe what accomplished or successful looked like. And then as we went through the year, again, let's not get lost in the details. Every time we were getting close to something, another roadblock in the negotiation would come up. They needed another concession and so forth and so on. So yeah, that is how. In other words, like the police, like the fire, and like the real heroes of our communities did, they should have been back to work when the parents wanted them back to work. These are our kids, right? And I'm ranting here a little bit. I apologize. These are our kids. Keep your kid home if you don't feel good about it, right? But and if you don't feel comfortable coming in, we'll make accommodations, but get out the way, because the science was clear. It was safe. It's still safe. The death rate, as you know, or maybe you don't know, do you agree? 0.007% is the COVID death rate?
For what?
For catching COVID. For dying, your likelihood of dying from COVID is 0.0007%.
All right, I wanted to tell you something because I did write this down in prep for our interview. So to date in the United States, 736,000 people have died of COVID. And I heard you say in a previous show that the flu was worse, but something I read today, usfacts.com, in the worst flu season, 61,000 people in the worst flu season in the past decade died of COVID. So right now, 8 times that. And we're not 8 years in. So, but that's actually not my answer to your question.
Well, but hold on. But you threw that out there, and I'm not just going to let that hang. Of course, there are more deaths from COVID. It's new. We didn't know anything about it, and it hit us by surprise. That you're comparing apples and orangutans.
Yeah, but wait a second. You're the one who compared it to the flu on a previous show. It wasn't me. I didn't bring this up. You did.
All right, fair point. But again, we're talking about percentage of people who catch it and die. If you catch the flu, kills more young people by far than the COVID. And the flu, and if you catch the flu, you are more likely to die. It's higher than 0.007%. So, but we can continue. Go ahead.
I'm just bringing this up to say that COVID is not an insignificant health issue, right? It is not, and to your point, it is a crisis that we've never dealt with before.
And there's also the fact that a lot of these deaths were attributed to COVID. Dude got in a car accident, got killed. Hey, no, my daughter works in a major hospital in South Florida. A major hospital.
My brother-in-law's a neurosurgeon.
She told me that they were telling them if you think it's COVID related or if they have COVID, that's how they died. They count that as a COVID death. You can get in a car accident and die. If you had COVID, that was a COVID death. This is a fact. So those numbers could be skewed.
It could be skewed, but of course, everything could be skewed, right? So
but we're talking about this.
Facts. You want to talk about facts? Right. So some of these COVID deaths weren't really COVID deaths, but I'm gonna guess that over 700,000 people died of COVID since it started.
And it's your right to think that, and I think otherwise because
so how come my opinions or my facts are opinions and your facts are facts? That's not fair.
Because my fact is my daughter works in a major hospital, and she told me they were told that if somebody gets in an accident, if somebody dies and they had COVID when they died, either if they got shot or if they got run over, that's counted as a COVID death.
So
they didn't die of COVID.
That no one is dying of COVID anymore?
Oh, no one.
No, but I'm saying that the number 750,000, I think, is skewed, extremely skewed.
Okay, maybe that number is not quite right. But actually, I want to go back to the school committee thing, which I think is why I'm on here.
You took it over there.
I did. But to suggest that the only thing the school committee does or will ever do is manage COVID seems to me a pretty short-sighted.
Who's suggesting that?
You.
No, I did not.
You
No.
suggested, you
So he was talking
said-
about the teachers union. He was talking
you
about the
said
teachers
Yeah.
union.
that
I'm
the
talk-
reason that people were running for school committee was because they didn't like the way the teachers behaved.
I said some of the reasons.
Some of
One
the
is yes, you listen, more ears. Forgive me for saying this, but you need to use your ears a bit better. I'm sorry, but don't
Todd, I'm
I'm
a college
get
professor.
offended
Don't
when
talk to me like I'm a
Easy now,
kindergartner.
easy,
I'm not a
easy.
kindergartner.
Listen, listen.
okay?
I don't
Easy.
care. I don't care if you're a doctorate. You don't talk to me.
I
You're not
am
listening
a
to me. I don't care. You're not listening.
All right.
Listen to me.
All right, let's stop right here. All right, Suzanne, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, could I just address the thing though? This is I'm not gonna get into a tiff with
Well, I
with Todd,
really
whose
didn't.
conversation I've really
I didn't want to do this, but I really didn't want to hit that button. But
He had to.
just don't get him fired up again.
Okay. Well, can I answer the question?
Yes,
that I
yes,
think
ma'am,
I
you
was
may.
asked, which
Yes.
was there are so many issues, many of which we've talked about tonight, right? That I think are beyond. And I mean, I hope to God that COVID is waning, right? And I think we might have different opinions about to what extent that is happening. But I do agree. I think things are getting better. And so I think that the issues of the future for the school committee are things like that we've been talking about. The language, the lack of kind of support for teaching foreign languages, the band issue, the bus issue, the MCAS scores that came out last week, where Winthrop is not doing great. So this is all to say, you're right. We can argue till kingdom come about the COVID numbers, but I think that the issues facing the school system are so much broader than this particular moment in time. So I think that I just wanted to have a chance to say that, because I think it's really easy to get hung up in like the here and now of like COVID and masks and what the parents want and what their kids want. But really, like, this is a 4-year term I'm being asked to serve. And I really hope that I'm not talking about masks in 6 months. Right. And I'd love to not be. I'd love to be talking about other things.
So we just went over an hour, which is fine. That's the good thing about live streaming. As I always say, there's no time limit on a live stream, right? I'm going to ask you a question, then we could probably wrap it up from there. So as Todd had touched on a couple minutes ago, you seem to be a progressive, correct? You were saying yes, right? And I'm going to give you...
What's your opinion, Scott?
No, he asked you. He said, you're a liberal progressive? And you said, yeah. You said, yeah. You nodded yes. Let's go to the tape.
If you're not,
Regardless, because then he said we have a lot of conservative people that watch the show also.
It's fine. You're right.
So here's your chance to get the conservative vote, right? Because that seems to be the line that's drawn. Unfortunately, that's the line that's drawn down the middle, right? So what do you think you could say to conservative voters that would garner their vote? Or some of them?
I would say that I care passionately about the town of Winthrop. I care passionately about our students. And I have a long view of what it will take to make sure that our school is competitive in the current kind of, not only in the current sort of state of affairs, but in the state of affairs kind of like that we are going to be dealing with, into the future. So I think I would urge them to take a long view, right? So I know that issues like masks and CRT are the things that we're talking a lot about right now. But I would say, I think there are other issues that are much more of a threat, in all honesty, to our students' ability to be good citizens, like something I think we can agree on in this conversation. And that's really my end game, right? Is producing good citizens and making sure that the Winthrop schools reflect the excellence that I see in this town.
And you want a bus system.
And I want a bus.
And you like civics.
I like civics.
There
Those
you
la-
go. I didn't want you to forget those. Those
The civics is
are
a
my
good
hot points. Those are the peak moments.
That's
the civics was a highlight.
Yes, that was a
in the
great
buck
answer.
was a
And I
highlight.
really, people that get into politics say a lot of things. They make a lot of promises. This goes from the lowest level to the highest level. And, we've had people come on, mostly I think we had at least half of the candidates for the school committee. I just hope they stick to that. I hope if you get elected, you stick to that civics-minded ideal of making kids better citizens and not let politics or anything drain into the system that might disrupt that, And I do hope that you seem passionate about the busing, so I won't have to bring that up. I hate saying busing. When you say busing around Massachusetts,
my
brings back
God,
bad
that's
memories.
true. You're totally right. No, it's hard to talk about busing without having a
We want busing. We want
We want-
busing in
we want
Winthrop.
busing.
We want busing
All
in
about
Winthrop. Let me ask you one more question that I didn't ask, and I've asked all the. And I'm sorry, Todd. Did you have anything, buddy?
No, keep going.
All right. What is your position when it comes to school choice? What's your thoughts on school choice?
Yeah, that's such a good question. My goodness. And I know we're over time.
No, we
It's
got
okay.
plenty of
It's
time.
okay. Keep going.
Okay. I mean, so I am the daughter of a public school teacher. I went to public schools. I am not ignorant of the fact that there are some really innovative things going on in charter schools near us, right? I'm pretty good friends with some people who teach in some charter schools, and some of the freedoms they have are just astounding, right? So but but I believe passionately in public schools, right? Because it's available to everyone, and that's really important to me. So I think I totally understand the temptation of like, the schools are failing my child. I want my child in a better school system, right? And I'll be, really frank here. There was a time when my husband and I thought, oh, we only have one kid. Like maybe when she gets a little older, if we decide the school systems aren't like for us in Winthrop, they're not serving our needs, maybe we'll, look elsewhere. But that's also not the kind of citizen I want to be, to kind of get back to civics, right? Like I want to invest in my town, and I want to invest in my schools. And I believe in public education, right? It's not perfect, and it has a ton of problems. But that's a value I hold, and that's why I'm running for school committee.
So, if I could add, so I agree with you that the public, again, when we talked about this earlier, that public education is there for everybody. It's meant to serve broadly, right? But I guess I'd ask you a follow up on that, because it sounds like you're responding to the school choice with the vouchers, where the money follows the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And in those scenarios, especially in places, let's talk Winthrop, right? Like if a kid had an opportunity, especially a kid, a child of lesser means, socioeconomic means, or maybe a child of color. Someone, you've mentioned in several of your answers that marginalized groups need help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why wouldn't you be for allowing those students to take their money, or would you be for them to have their tax dollars follow them to a better school system that they want to go to? Because you do realize, right? Competition does force improvement or failure. You either sink or you swim.
It's really hard. I
Can Winthrop afford to be competitive? That's a question. Remember, I don't live. My kids didn't go to school. So that's an innocent question from me.
Yeah.
When it comes in regards to that, Todd. So and you and I'm surprised haven't talked about that, Todd.
Well, let me, Suzanne, allow to help you a little bit on that one, because I think we can, but it depends on us being creative, and we have to define what we think competitive is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like this. It's kind of like the middle school. What do you do with that building? Well, first you have to realize what it is. What can it be? Okay, well, we're in Winthrop, and my point earlier about overrides, Winthrop's going to be what it's going to be. So, and it's going to be based upon what people are willing to spend in tax dollars. And if you can't get more, which you're not going to get more, I can tell you that right now, it's not going to happen. and okay, if you think it's going to happen, fine, try it. But for the now, we need to live within our means. Period. We over. By the way, just so you're educated on this part of it, you'll learn this if you get in there. When we do things like say yes to a 3-year agreement, we do that knowing we don't have enough money the following 2 years to pay for it. We just worry about it then.
Yeah.
That is irresponsible at the highest level. Moving on.
I think that's a common practice in a lot of municipalities. I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Especially in municipalities like ours, because we're thin, we shouldn't be doing that. Shouldn't be doing it.
I agree.
All right. So
go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Go ahead.
I want to say you gave as good as you got, Suzanne. So, in fact, I'd argue you gave and then you got in many of these cases, but that's fine. That's what we want.
Like.
Yeah. We don't want, and I do think a lively and these types of discussions are important. We disagree vehemently on a few things. It's pretty obvious. However, I think at the end of the day, our goals are the same. My only argument to you would be this. We've been basically doing it the way you think we should be doing it for a very long time, and we keep ending up with the same result. But we could talk about that over coffee someday. But I think you gave as good as you got. You did a good job. I want to thank you again. I want to wish you the best of luck. And on those common ground issues, I'm hoping, by the way, one of them is eliminating user fees. That's a tax on the poor. I think that's something we can agree upon. I would be more than happy to work with you and help you in any way I can on those things that we agree on.
Thank you. I this might sound really masochistic of me, but I thought this was quite fun. I enjoyed myself.
No, and it's meant to be. We're not, like somebody's commented last week, we might have a reputation for being negative. We just call it the way we see it, and that's I think it's honest. We don't make stuff up. We don't we don't swing the bat at anyone that doesn't need the bat swung at them. Like the town council president, Oban Corey, and all of his misgivings. But that has nothing to do with you, Suzanne. It has nothing to do with you.
All right, the Winthrop transcript then.
And the Winthrop transcript, because we bring you the news, the Winthrop transcript won't. But we hope to have you on again sometime, whether you got elected or not.
Might be easier if I don't get elected. Then we can come and spar.
Well, I mean, again, we want, once the election is over, we're kind of rebranding, and it will be Winthrop Votes, the issues, right? So then we're going to talk about issues around Winthrop.
Great.
And if you ever want to come on and talk about anything, you have an open door. We have an open door policy for anybody that wants to come on and discuss things, whether you want to argue with us, or you want to agree with us, or you just want to state something and see what response you can get. But either way, you're always welcome to come back on. This show isn't going anywhere. We might take a hiatus here and there.
Fair enough. And I would offer the door the same way. If there's something you want me to come on and talk about, I'm happy to accept that invitation.
I got that little in her head. She's thinking, should I really commit to that? Okay. And I will say you are the second guest to suffer Todd's wrath of COVID talk.
I figured it.
As you can see, he's very passionate about this.
It's a clear.
It's almost admirable. It's almost admirable how passionate he is about this. But you weathered the storm well, Suzanne. You weathered the storm well.
I appreciate your passion, and I think that's another thing we have in common. So thanks for doing this, and thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
No problem.
No worries. Thank you again. God, good luck. And by the way, when you get on, just know I have the power of FOIA. So if you're gonna,
we're watching.
We're watching.
We're watching.
There you are.
Todd, who's on next Monday?
Chief Terry Delahanty is on next Monday. And I think we're going to have a special Tuesday edition next week where we might have a couple of repeat guests. I got outreach from Julie DeMarco Barry would like to come out and come on again. And Jim Lettieri would like to come on again. So I think we'll have a special edition Tuesday show.
And I'm surprised that more candidates didn't want to use this forum. It's free. It's free advertising. We're getting, like Todd said, like 500, 600, 300 after views. That's all potential votes. That means people are watching and paying attention in Winthrop. And Todd lost by 11 votes. So every vote counts in these elections. So good luck, Suzanne.
Thank you.
We will be probably talking again, whether you get on or you don't. We would like to have you back on and maybe talk about some societal issues.
I would welcome
because
that,
it's going to be a more broad spectrum of discussion. Once the election's over,
I don't know, my first
it'll make for
foray into
good
right-wing politics. It's fun.
It'll make for good TV, as they say, must-see TV.
You know something, Scott? I think she just hit the nail on the head for our first topic. Maybe we should define right-wing politics, because I don't know that. I don't necessarily think we subscribe to that, but we should define it.
Let's
on
save
another
that,
day,
because we're already in an. She's got the most time of any candidate that's come on.
Yep.
So.
All right, everybody.
That's
listen,
good or bad.
We're cutting her off right now. All politics starts at the local level. Get out and vote. Pay attention. Share this, whether you liked her or not. Share it, because if you didn't like her, she might get elected if you don't share it.
And maybe you don't like Todd and you don't want to share it.
Yeah.
But, who knows?
You can't shut him up if you don't share it.
Yeah, because everybody likes me.
Oh, God.
I'm the only guarantee on this show right now. All right, listen, I'm going to log us off. Everybody, thank you for watching. Suzanne, stay on. Todd, stay on. And we will see you next Monday night, 8 o'clock, with Chief Terry Delahanty on the Winthrop Votes live stream. Good night, everybody.